online broadcast network, AFTERBUZZ TV. Over 20 million weekly downloads in over 150 countries, and your number one source for after-show entertainment. AFTERBUZZ TV, the destination for TV superfans. Producing aftershows for over 300 of your favorite TV shows, interviewing celebrities and showrunners, and bringing you behind-the-scenes exclusives. All thanks to E! Entertainment's Maria Menounos, producer Kevin Undergaro, and internet leader Akamai. Now, let the buzz begin!
Welcome to AfterBuzz TV's Spotlight On series. I'm your host, Fern Ronay, and welcome to everyone tuning in, including all of my fellow John Edward junkies out there. You know who you are. There are a lot of us. It is such an honor to welcome my very special guest, John Edward.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here.
I'm excited. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. Of course, this is John Edward, internationally known psychic medium, New York Times bestselling author, the host of 2 television series. Larry King wrote the intro to one of his books that I recently reread, Afterlife. 5 stars, 10 stars. And I love this one. Dr. Oz said, after meeting you, the experience changed his life. So you changed Dr. Oz's life.
That's nice to hear.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people can say that.
I think it's cool when people make statements like that. They get like picked up in the press. And,
Right.
But I sit back and I wonder if Dr. Oz remembers he said that day. It's like, but thank you.
Right. So you've been changing lives for a long time, because that can't be the first time you've heard that.
No, I've been changing lives for 30 years.
Yeah, can you believe it?
No, I really can't.
But you're only 31, so how's that possible?
Seriously, I want to lie and say I
you're
started
very
doing this
young.
at 5. No, I just turned 45. I started at 15, but it's been 30 years.
Well, that's what I want to talk. I wanted to start at the beginning. When God made John Edward, he made him from Long Island, New York.
He
I
did.
love it.
He did.
Glen Cove, right?
Yes, Glen Cove.
And so I wanted to start at 15. We'll go back to earlier in your childhood, but at 15 was a bit of a turning point, because that was when you met Lydia Cla.
Correct.
And I love that she showed up at your house, not unexpectedly. She was invited.
Some random psychic just descended upon my grandmother's house.
She knew. So your mom was having a reading with relatives, and Lydia Cla was...
They used to call them house parties.
Oh, I love it.
Yep.
With coffee and cake, I'm
Coffee
sure.
and cake, Entenmann's.
Of course.
Had to be Entenmann's.
I love it. So you were planning on attending, you did attend, and you thought it was going to be baloney.
Absolutely.
Until you were read.
My dad was a New York City police officer and a career military guy. Not a fan of anything psychic. Wouldn't let me be around it when I was a kid. Like, that was a rule. Make sure Johnny's not around. But my mom and her side of the family used to have this happen pretty regularly. They would go for readings, and then they had people come to the house. My mom and dad separated when I was 13. We moved into my grandmother's house, which is where all this happened.
Right.
And my mom met this woman, Lydia, in the city, and invited her to come to the house. And she said, I don't normally do that, because she didn't have to.
Right.
But she said, I'll come under one condition. Make sure your son's there. So my mom, who always made sure I was never around, came home and said, this woman is amazing, and she's agreed to come to the house. She doesn't do this, but she agreed to come to the house. She just wants to meet you. And I remember thinking, it was an odd feeling, because my mom was trying to make me feel like it was a cool thing, but I also felt like I was bait. Like she'll come, but we're gonna hang you out.
Right. We'll dangle you there so Lydia shows up.
Like, why does she want to meet me?
So she knew your mom had a son, and she knew that there was a reason she had to meet you.
Yeah, the behind-the-scenes story is that I had a blood result for my sophomore high school exam that came up weird, and they thought I had a brain tumor because of the hormonal whatever. So my mom gets a phone call at work from my cousin who had taken me to the doctor. They think he might have a brain tumor. What do I do? So my mom at that moment is in Manhattan. I'm out on Long Island. And the woman standing in front of her says, do you believe in psychics? And my mom's like, yeah, why? She said, well, I hear that there's something going on. Mm-hmm. Lydia works upstairs. Maybe I can actually contact her. So I kind of find this part weird. Instead of like getting in a car and coming home, she goes up to the whatever floor to go talk to the psychic. And my mom called me back. By the time I got home, she said, I just want you to know, I spoke to Lydia. I'm like, who the hell is Lydia? I thought Lydia was worked at the doctor's office. And she's like, and she told me you're going to be fine. I went, great. who the hell's Lydia? And she said, well, she's the psychic that works in my building.
Right.
And I remember having this moment of like, whoa, like, wait a second, what if I actually have something? Like, we're going to get this checked, right?
Right.
Very logical, very analytical. Sure. And long story short, I was fine.
Yeah.
So then she went back to Lydia and said, would you come to the house? And she said, under one condition, I want to meet your son.
Nice.
So when she came, she read 17 people. I remember that very clearly, and I was one of them.
And when she read you, she told you things that only you knew about girls you liked in school. You were in high school.
She told me stuff. First of all, the first part of the stuff was like completely ridiculous. She took my high school ring and she did something called psychometry. Psychometry is where you hold on to an object and you read the person's energy through their object. So she's not even looking at me. She's like doing this. And then she starts rattling off that I have highly evolved beings of white and gold light that are, you know, ready to, it's kind of weird because they have white and gold light, that are ready to work with me and put me on my path. But she's not looking at me.
And you'd never heard anything like that
God,
before.
No.
Right.
You know, so I was like, this woman's a nutbag. Like, seriously, I think this one's completely, like, she's out there.
Right.
And I'm like, okay. And then the second part of the reading, she started telling me stuff that got my attention because I was like, holy crap, like, maybe she could do this. And then I stopped and I went, wait a second. I could apply this to like 5 other guys in high school. The last part of the reading scared the crap out of me because the stuff that she knew, I would have personally had to tell her.
Right.
Nobody else could have told her. So it freaked me out a little bit. And then she said to me, do you want to know more about this? And I was like, and honestly, I lied to her. I was like, I don't even know what you're talking about because I thought, crap, she knows my mother. Like, if she goes back and tells my mother this, like, this is not a conversation I need to be having. So I lied.
Right.
The reading was over, but she gave me more information about it. And I went downstairs and they were like, what happened? So I couldn't tell her about the last part. So I told them about the first 2 parts. And the ironic part is my family laughed and said, oh, you're right, maybe she couldn't read you. But she freaked me out. She absolutely freaked me out.
Yeah, because were the first 2 parts, they were general, right?
Well, the first part was kind of freaky. You know, you have
with the white
beings
lights,
of white and gold light that want to put you on your path. I mean, I was 15.
Right.
So to put it in context, at 15, like, I was a smart ass. I still am a smart ass, but I was a real big smart ass at 15. And I like, I don't know, I kind of felt like if she was psychic, shouldn't she know that I didn't believe that she can do this, and shouldn't she come at me in a certain way? I was a little immature in my approach.
Right.
But she was amazing.
Right. And I love when you do readings that some of the things are, people say they're mundane, they're details, but everyone's mother loves them, or everyone, you know, from whoever's following them on the other side, of course they love them. That's too general. But something like you were eating a ham sandwich yesterday.
Well, I'll give you an example from something recent. Last week I was here, and as I was driving to one of my events in California, I get a phone call from the woman who runs my event, and she goes, we might be a little bit delayed. And I said, okay. Why? I said, traffic? Because I'm stuck in it. And she goes, no, you have protesters. And I go, I have protesters? And I go, like what, 1 or 2 people? And she goes, no, you got a pretty good show here. She's like, you got like a good amount of people protesting, signs, you know, LED lights, cameras. And I was like, seriously? I go, for me? I said, wow, I'm kind of honored. I go, after so long doing this, I go,
You've arrived.
Thank you. I've got protesters. But I said during my speech, I wish the people that were outside would take the time to educate themselves and learn about the subject matter. Do I think that they serve a purpose? I do. Do I think that they represent the other side of the other side for people who maybe aren't legit? Yeah, I do. And I kind of like go explore what they say is being done. But on the flip side, explore what's being done and then don't try to say it's not possible.
Right. Maybe
say, holy crap, maybe this is possible. So one of the things that I said at the last event that sticks in my head was somebody's uncle was coming through and said specifically, showed me, I don't know how old you are, but they showed me Happy Days, and I saw a Potsy from Happy Days. And she goes, well, yeah, that makes sense because my uncle was good friends with the actor.
Oh, funny.
So that is not a random kind of
and Potsy would mean nothing to me.
Right.
Yes.
So that's just one of many things that should and do come through during a session that would be validation. But on the flip side of that, sometimes it takes a moment or two to get somebody to understand what it is that's coming through. So out of context, somebody can make you sound like you're completely an idiot and makes no sense at all, and not wait for the understanding of what that meant.
Right.
So it's interesting to see.
I love like the example of sometimes a bell is just a bell, because that story is amazing. Skipping ahead, because how you do it is you get like, you know, images and feelings and kind of like seeing a picture like a daydream, and you had a picture of a bell. So to you, you're saying Ben Franklin or something with the Liberty Bell, Philadelphia, but there was a whole other story.
There was a woman whose husband came through, and throughout the entire reading, everything made a lot of sense. But I kept seeing, like, you know, on television, you see little like logos in the bottom.
Right.
I kept seeing a bell. Instead of saying I'm seeing a bell, I decided to interpret what that bell would mean.
Right.
And that to me would be the Liberty Bell. That took me to Philadelphia. And it took me down a path that made absolutely no sense to this woman, to the point that she went, oh, maybe it's not him. And I like looked at her like, okay, if 99% of it made sense and this one thing doesn't make sense, you're going to like disregard the rest of it? I said, I just don't understand what the bell means. And she gasped. And I like looked at her and I went, but clearly you do. What does the bell mean? And the story wound up is that he was away on a business trip, brought her back a bell from where he was, put it in his briefcase. Monday came and said, he saw it, said, honey, if you ever need me, just ring this. Put it on her nightstand, left, and got into a vehicle accident on the bridge.
Right.
It's the last thing he did.
Mm-hmm.
So all I had to say is, I don't know what this means, but he's showing me a bell.
Right.
Sometimes a bell is just a
Right.
bell.
Because they don't have physical bodies to talk. They're still here. The energy has crossed over. They can't speak to you.
Correct.
So this is how they speak to you. And it is a form of telepathy
It is.
between you and the
It
other
is
side.
an energetic form of communication,
Right.
and it's symbolic. A lot of people think, and TV has done a great disservice, movies as well, of making this seem like it's conversational, like you and I are speaking.
Right.
And it is, but it's a symbolic form of communication.
Right.
So I was on a TV show many, many years ago, and the producer said to me, dude, like, why can't they just talk? Why does it got to be, there's a J name, there's a this, they had that. And I knew he was asking legitimately for himself. His name was Brendan. I go, Brendan, how do deaf people communicate? He goes, sign language. I go, why don't they just talk? He's like, what do you mean? I go, why don't they just talk? He goes,
Exactly.
because they're deaf. I go, right. And these people are dead. They don't
Right.
have a physical body. I said, so if people who are alive and living have to communicate via sign language, I go, it's a symbolic form of communication. This is an energetic form of communication. And it is subjective to the interpretation.
Right.
And sometimes you get it wrong, sometimes you get it right.
Right. And if somebody didn't have, you could say if somebody didn't have a mouth, their mouth was sewn shut for the rest of their life, how would they communicate? They'd draw J's in the air and
Exactly.
and do charades. So going back to your childhood, you talked about things as a child that happened before you were born.
Correct.
Did that scare your
No, they didn't. It didn't freak them out at all. The one that I always go back to is I remember clearly sitting on my grandmother's lap. Go back to no car seats, right? I'm on my grandmother's lap, no seatbelt.
That's how they did it back then.
And I said to my mom, "Tell me that story again about how you cut your ankle on the bottle at the beach." And she was like, "Yeah." And she starts talking, and she goes, "We were clamming at the beach, and your uncles were doing." And she stopped. And she looked at me. She goes, "Who told you that?" And I looked at her and I went, "You must have." She's like, "I was 13 years old when that happened." She goes, "I don't remember telling you that." I go, "Well, you had to tell me. How would I know?" That happened a lot.
Right.
I knew family history.
Right. I
I knew stuff. And they used to say, "Oh, he's like," they used to call my cousin Phyllis Lois Lane. And they would call me Jimmy Olsen because we were both the nosy cousins. So they thought like we just heard these things and remember them. But I legitimately didn't know how I knew them. But I just knew them.
So after Lydia Cla, you started doing research.
Oh, yeah. She freaked me out enough to actually I felt violated.
Yeah.
Like I literally felt like this woman like walked around my life. I mean, I gave her permission, but I didn't like it. So I wanted to know how did she do this so nobody else could ever do this again?
Right.
And I was embarrassed to check the books out of the public library because it was under the occult section.
Right.
And I didn't want to be seen taking books out of the occult section because it had the word cult in it. Sounds dark and scary. So I sat on the floor of the public library after school every day and read every book that they had. And the more that I read, the more that I raised my awareness, the more that I understood what stuff was. And I kept going, but this is not psychic. Like, this is normal. Like, everybody has this, like, right? And I started asking people, specifically in high school, like, did you ever have this? Did you ever have that? And a lot of people were answering me no. I'm like, really? And I remember one of my friends turned around and said, why do you? And I was like, I kind of do. And he was like, oh, you're a freak. It was a joke, like, oh, you're a freak. So I started keeping things closer.
Right.
But I would say within 6 months of the reading with Lydia, I had another reading. And literally, the woman got up from the table and went to the phone. And I remember thinking, like, wait a second, this is completely unprofessional. She's supposed to be, like, reading for me, and she's on the phone. And I hear her say, hi, Sheila, I have this young guy. His name's John, and he's going to come to the psychic fair on Sunday. And I'm thinking, this is crazy. She sits back down, and she goes, you need to show up at the Snug Harbor Cultural Center on Sunday to meet Sheila. And I was like, who the hell is Sheila? She goes, oh, Sheila runs the psychic fair. She goes, and you need to meet her. I go, why do I need to meet Sheila? She goes, because you're going to be doing this work professionally. So now in my head, I'm like, wait a minute. Like, is this like a line like all psychics give their clients? Like,
Right.
you too could do that. And I legitimately, I was blown away. The process just kept like, it's like a current just moved me down this path.
Right. And you met all the teachers you
And
were
I
meant
met
to
all
meet.
the people that I was supposed to meet.
And Sheila being...
Sheila was the person who ran the psychic fairs. And the first time I actually met her, I was already doing some kind of like tarot readings for my cousins. I was doing psychometry, playing around, not seriously. And she said, do a reading for me. And I did. And she made me stay that day. And I read 9 people. And I was like,
she put you to work.
The same day. I was like, this is kind of crazy. And that's how everything's been for me.
Right.
Like, it just kind of fell in front of me.
And Shelley Peck, right, came into
Peck.
your life, and she was a great teacher and friend.
Shelley Peck became more of a friend than a mentor.
Yeah.
But Sandy Anastasi was the person and who I could say legitimately was my teacher.
Oh, okay.
Until she threw me out of her class.
Oh, right, because you're doing so well.
Yeah, she was like, you're a little too advanced for the rest of the folks. She goes, you're gonna make this a little bit hard for me to kind of keep them there when you're here. So you're gonna have to, you're beyond this.
Right.
But
so all of these people, Sheila, Sandy,
Shelley, all put in my path.
Did I get that name first name right? Sheila.
So
all these S's.
Yep. All these S's. Yeah. Very interesting. Yeah. Then I married Sandra.
Right. Yes.
All the S's definitely had a very strong impact.
And they were meant to come at certain times. So your mom, I love that you describe her as a psychic junkie. Dad, not so much.
No, Dad definitely not.
And so of course I mentioned that I recently reread Afterlife. In the last chapter, I don't want to talk about your dad too much, but it's safe to say that, well, he passed over 10 years ago, but you could say that you have a better relationship with him now.
Absolutely.
Than when he was here.
Oh, God, yeah. I had no relationship really with him.
Right.
I know he loved me, but I know he didn't like me.
Right.
So, and I know a lot of people kind of don't get that. And then there are a lot of people who totally get that and go, oh, my God, I understand that.
Just because somebody's your dad doesn't mean they have to like you. Of course he's going to love you because that's...
Again, military, police.
Right. 2 totally
psychic.
Different... Right.
Like, just not...
Right, yeah.
I
and you gravitated toward your Italian side of the family. He was
much more.
Right, more conservative on the
I never
Irish
really
side.
embraced the Irish side
Right.
until I got older.
Right.
But, after my dad passed, I kind of felt like I was able to look at actually my entire upbringing very much differently, like through a different lens. And I think when I became a dad, I became a dad and my dad passed literally in like 2 months.
Right.
And I kind of felt like that was a life-altering moment for me because where one life was beginning, another aspect of my life was ending. And that pattern wasn't lost on me because I was paranoid that I was going to be a really crappy dad. So I just wanted to get it right because there's no rule book when it comes to parenting.
Right, and no do-overs.
No,
right.
and I didn't want to mess up this little guy that chose me to be his dad. So I started to look at my son as if it was me looking through my dad's eyes. And once I did that, once my perspective shifted, then I thought, wow, maybe my mom could have handled certain situations differently.
Right.
I never would have been able to say that as a teenager or a 20-year-old.
Right.
Or 30-year-old.
Right.
I wouldn't have been able to do that. I had to have specific experiences. Right. And my dad's passing helped to do that. And I talked about it openly in the book because I wanted people to know that if you had a bad relationship with someone here, you really can work on healing yourself and that relationship simultaneously without a reading.
Right. And so your mom, you were so close to her. She passed when you were 19, and you put her on a pedestal because she's...
I did.
And so, like you say, you wouldn't have been able to say, maybe she made some mistakes too until after. Right, yeah.
It was a pretty powerful moment too. Because I remember thinking, I never identified or I never tried to empathize with my dad. But I was able to do that once I was married and had children. The being married part didn't quite do it yet.
Right.
It was when I added Justin.
He was still alive.
Yeah.
Too. And then after he died. Yeah.
But it was once my son came.
Yeah.
That was the lens.
Yeah.
Not the married lens.
Right.
It was the daddy lens.
And so you were raised Catholic. Do you feel? Me too. I'm 100% Italian, raised Roman Catholic. And do you ever feel like you have to reconcile what you do with being Catholic?
I did that a long time ago.
Okay.
I kind of felt like an outcast because, according to whoever you speak to in Catholicism or the Catholic Church, this is not popular. So therefore, I come from the family. If you miss Mass on Sunday, you have to go to confession before you can receive. You know, it's not like say an act of contrition and you're all good.
Right.
So that's the kind of upbringing.
Or God loves you and it's okay.
Yeah, no,
right.
it's not. It's not okay. And my mom stopped going to receive communion because she was divorced, and that's against the rules, and all these rules. And I thought, like, isn't God just kind of like universally loving? Like, why is it got to be all fire and brimstone and eternal damnation? If I eat meat on Friday, oops. Like, why is it got to be like that?
Right.
These are the rules. So I kind of felt by default that I too was going to be excommunicated because I was choosing a path of belief that was expanding upon the language that I was speaking. But I was the kid that got thrown out of religious instruction for asking questions that should never be asked, where they thought that I was being difficult and contentious. I wasn't. I just had questions. Like, I wanted to know, like, if there was Adam and Eve and they had Cain and Abel and we all came from them, wouldn't that mean that Eve had sex with her kids?
Right.
That got me thrown out. And I thought that was a viable question.
Right, logical.
Right.
You're
Can't
doing
be
the
logical.
numbers. Yeah.
You're not allowed to do that, apparently.
Right.
So I just kind of felt removed to the side.
Right.
Fast forward, on one afternoon, I was doing clients in the afternoon and that evening, and I have my first client comes, and she's wearing a habit. And I was like, can I help you? And she's like, I'm here to see John. And I went,
She's going to yell at me.
I was like, are you Francesca? And she goes, I am. I was like, okay, come on in. She came in, I sat her down, I said, I'll be right with you. And I went to the other room and I called my girlfriend, wife now, at work, and I was like, there's a nun here. What do I do? And she goes, why is she there? And I go, for a reading. She goes, then go read her. I go, yeah, but she's got like her whole thing going on. I go, what do I do? I said, it's very distracting. She goes, just go do what you do. I went in, I did the reading, and she said, I just want you to know that I was here to expose you. And I like looked at her and I was like, excuse me? She goes, well, I run a grief circle. And a lot of my parishioners and people are parents who've lost kids. She goes, and your name keeps coming up over and over again. She goes, so I was basically here to expose you. She goes, but you clearly are an instrument that God's using to help people. Right. And I'd like to know that I can call upon you. And let me tell you, she did many a time.
Good.
Same day, a priest came to me.
Oh, I love it.
Not wearing anything.
Okay, undercover.
And, like, completely casual clothes.
Right.
But he hears me tell the last client that the nun came, and he starts off going, I think I should tell you something. And I went, no, you can't tell me anything. My job is to give you the information.
Right.
Fast forward, I sit down, and I said to him, I have your dad coming through. He goes, well, then I'm going to have to make a phone call because I just had dinner with him.
Okay.
And then I see the word father again in front of him, and I said, well, then your father-in-law must be passed because I'm seeing the word father. He goes, I can assure you, I am not married. And in my head, it was my last client. I was tired. Right. And I was like, you know what? I don't want to really do this. Right. So I leaned forward and I went, listen, like that. And as I did that, he morphed all in black until the white collar. And I was like, oh, you're a priest? He goes, that's what I wanted to tell you. Okay. And we've been good friends ever since. He was just at my daughter's birthday on Sunday.
Oh, really?
Yep. So I've known him for quite a long time. But I said to him at the end of the day, I go, why today would I have a nun and a priest come to me like in one day? And he said, point blank, he goes, you're having a crisis of faith. He goes, and the big guy sent 2 people in.
I love it.
And ever since then, I felt like somebody kind of gave me a buoy. So I might not be on the boat, but I'm still in the water.
Right. I love it because I'm going through this. I'm Catholic. My husband's Jewish. I'm the godfather to my nephew. His father is a doctor. So a medical doctor, he doesn't adhere to this, but my mother and I are. So we're like your mother. And I feel as if, I don't think I'm a bad godmother. As far as I'm concerned, this is about love. And if
it is.
It wouldn't be from God if the word love, if it wasn't about love. If it was, the word love was never mentioned, then maybe it would be something darker. But no, this is God because it's all about love.
No, it's healing, it's energy. And, I've actually kind of taken a stand that this is a portrait of energy that I feel like I'm painting. And I just 2 weeks ago had somebody say, you dance around God and religion quite a bit. He goes, I just wish you'd go in there and make a statement. I said, I really can't. I said, because if I do it, I can only speak from my experience. I'm not a theologist. I said, I have to make sure that I, let people know, I come from a Catholic background. Right. So that's my perspective. I said, but I kind of am open to all religions because it's really a language. Right. So I look at language is how people communicate with each other. Religion is how people communicate with God. What's the best language? There really isn't a best language. It's one that's spoken maybe more often or more frequently based upon where you're born or where you live. Right. Same thing with religion. So I think it's just important to have a language to be able to communicate.
Right, exactly. And like I say, a relationship with God. My husband is Jewish, and I think he is, I always say he's the best Christian I know. He's the most generous, the most non-judgmental, and he has just a great relationship with God. So I think that's
and here's what I
it's
tell
all
people.
about.
I say, if I married somebody who was Jewish, and if my wife's faith was stronger in the practitioner kind of way,
Right.
practicing way that, you know, I am, I would totally not mind if my kids are raised Judaism.
Right.
Just, they need to have a language.
Right, exactly. That's what I say. You have to have a relationship
Have to
with
have a
God.
relationship
I
with the
even say that
foundation.
about, you know, people who are, you know, they lose loved ones and they're angry, and it doesn't mean that they say, why, you know, what God would do this? How could there be a God? There is. You can be angry with him, and you can tell him how angry you are.
There was a great
and that's
Christian
okay.
book written called The Shack. It was very, very popular.
Okay.
That book answers that question.
Okay.
It's
The
a really,
Shack.
yeah, it's a pretty powerful story.
Yeah.
It's a really
Okay.
powerful, it's called The Shack.
Okay.
I can never remember the author.
Okay.
As many times as I've referred to it, I've looked it up. I can never remember the guy's name.
Okay. I'll
And
find
I think
it.
that says something too. I think
Yeah.
because it's about the story. It's not about who wrote it.
Right.
It's about the message.
Right, exactly. So the other turning point, Uncle Carmine. I love this story. I was going to say Carmen because we later learned.
Well, you really, really did your research. Like, this is kind of freaky. Like, I'm so
I know,
impressed.
I don't want you to be scared.
No, I'm actually really, really impressed because.
Well, I recently reread Afterlife. I've read several of your books. I didn't read them all. The two most recent novels I have to read. They're on my to-be-read list. But my mom and I've read all
That's
of them.
so cool.
Yeah,
I
because
so appreciate that.
We're John Edward junkies.
In 1987, I saw my uncle have a heart attack and die. And I tried to stop it. And I mean, I really tried to stop it. Like sat my family down and be
Yeah.
like, I'm really concerned about this. And
A week before it
it
happened.
was actually months before.
Okay.
It was months before that I
Okay.
got it. I think it was like, I think it was like October. First time I got it might have been May. I actually don't know the date, so I was going back a little long.
Right, yeah.
But I had gotten it months. He passed in December. I had gotten it months before in another friend's reading. I was meditating and I wanted to impress her, and I had this whole thing, and I was like, wait a minute, I should pay attention to this because I was meditating and this happened. What do I do with this? So I called the family and they said, well, he's going for a physical. And the next day they gave him a clean bill of health.
Right. So
And I was like, wait a minute, no, they're missing something. But this was 1987. I started doing this in 1985.
Right.
I was just Johnny. You know what I'm saying?
Right,
I was
right.
cousin and nephew. I was not John Edward.
Right,
It was
right.
None of that. And I
And you were still developing your skills. then, too.
absolutely.
So, yeah, right.
And my ability was like a leaky faucet compared
Right.
to Niagara Falls now.
Right,
and I
right.
remember saying to my mom, like, we need to do something like soon. She's like, okay, we'll have his daughter come to the house, and I said something again, and it was just too late. He wound up having a heart attack in October, and it was just a slow spiral down to
Right.
December. And I remember being really tormented about that
Yeah.
because I couldn't stop it.
But the week before, you had seen his father point to a clock, and with a clock with flowers around
Yep.
it. And then at his funeral,
That
there's,
clock was there.
You know, Italians, right? They could send the big.
I had never seen that before.
Oh,
I
really?
really hadn't been to a lot of funerals.
Right.
But I remember I was trying to read. My aunt said to me, "So I hear you're doing readings," and I went, "I am." And she's like, "Oh, why don't you take me in the back room?" And literally said it like this: "Why don't you take me in the back room and do me?" And I was like, "Ew, like what? Just
Hope nobody
words you
overheard
never
that,
want
right?
to hear your
From
aunt
your
say."
aunt.
Exactly. So my mom looked at me like, "Go ahead, go." So I really wanted to impress her.
Right.
And I sat down and I made a connection with her father-in-law. I made a connection with her mother-in-law. I got all these people that she knew there's no way possible I would know with details. And I was like all excited. And this one man kept showing up. And I still see the image of what he was wearing, pulled out a comb, pointed to the flowers. We had no idea what that was.
Right.
Nobody could figure out who he was, none of it. Then when my uncle passed, I remember sitting in the funeral home, staring at the casket, and all of a sudden going, oh my God, I think that man was his father. And I went to go turn around to my Aunt Anna, and she was standing right here, and she goes, I think that man was his father. And I was like, whoa, it's kind of like
Right.
freaky. And then we got it validated.
Yeah.
It was actually his father.
He passed before you were born, so you
Yeah,
never
I
knew him.
never knew him.
Right. Wow. And so things like that just kept happening.
They kept happening.
Yeah.
And, it was kind of like learning how to recognize stuff.
Yeah.
And like what stuff was, how to keep your ego in check, to recognize what's the reason for doing this, like what's the purpose. And then in 1989, my mom was diagnosed with terminal lung cancer. And I did the opposite. I argued with the doctor and I was like, she does not have cancer. If she had cancer, I would know. And she did have cancer and I did not know. So I had these like two powerfully bookended experiences. One where I got it and couldn't stop it, one where I didn't get it and couldn't stop it. And it basically taught me that it's about what I'm allowed to see, not about what I want to see.
Exactly.
Oh, and by the way, it's what they're going to show you.
Right.
And some of the stuff you can't control, and bad things are going to happen, and there are lessons to be learned. And sometimes when something negative comes through, it's to better deal with it or to have a little bit of a heads up.
Right. So despite all of these things that were happening, you still got 2 degrees in
Healthcare and public administration.
Admin, and you were doing great at working at a hospital. But what was the turning point where you're like, I have to make this? Because you were reading dead people on the side.
I was actually doing a lot. I had met my wife through ballroom dancing, and I wanted to be part of her world, but I couldn't afford to do it. So I had to teach beginners to be part of that world.
Okay.
Then I was doing readings, and then I was working full time at a hospital while finishing up my degree. Like, I don't know. Seriously, I look back and I'm like, where the hell did you get the energy to do all this stuff?
Right?
And I remember like the convergence was salespeople that came to the hospital. I had read one of them.
Okay.
And then the word got out that I was at the hospital. So I was due a big like title bonus increase, the whole 9 yards.
Right.
My boss had gone out on maternity leave. I had covered for her. So I was like, this is going to be good. They made a big promise. And the vice president of the department called me in. So here I am waiting for you did a good job. This is what's going to happen.
It's your company car.
And what I wound up getting was, so we're getting phone calls and we want to know, like, what's this talking to the dead thing? And I was like, panicked. I was like, what? He's like, yeah. He goes, Marie from, communications called and we're fielding a few calls and, this is a little weird. And I remember it was like 3:30 in the afternoon. This guy's name is Marty. And I was like, Marty, can I come back at like 5 o'clock and talk to you then? He's like, sure. I'm back in my office. Meditated my ass off. And I was like, get me somebody in his family in his office at 5:30 from the other side. So I did. I literally went back in.
Oh, I thought you were going to say you meditated to get the answer that you should quit.
No.
Okay.
I went back in and I said, Marty, I could explain to you what I do or I could demonstrate. And he looked at me like, okay. And I read for him.
Okay.
And I remember his words exactly to me were, you need to go. And I was like, go home, go clean out my office? Like, exactly what does that mean? Like, you need to leave.
Yeah.
And he goes, no. He goes, you've just eradicated 40 years of a belief system in less than 20 minutes. There's no way you would be able to know what you knew in this short period of time. There's like, no way. He goes, so I need time to process this. So I said, do you mean come in tomorrow, right? And he nodded. So the next day I got there extra early because I was really nervous. I thought I was going to get fired.
Yeah.
And he walked past my office and he's always wearing an Indiana Jones hat. And he took off his hat and he looked back at me and he goes, why are you here? And I went, excuse me? He goes, why are you here? I said, because it's my job. And he smiled and he goes, why are you here? And he smirked. Shortly after that, my wife said to me, why are you doing the hospital thing? Like, why don't you do this?
Yeah.
I go, I'm not going to be a professional psychic. I go, I'm not putting that down as occupation. I go, it's not happening. I go, I didn't go to school for 5 years for that.
Right.
It's not what I'm doing. So I'll do it because I can do it, but it's not my job. It's not my programming. It's like, you're supposed to get your real job. You have your 401k. You have your vacation, your personal days, like analytical, practical. And I said, if I don't get the bonus and everything else I promised, then I'll leave.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. It didn't come through.
Okay.
So I kind of feel like the gentleman that I worked for just kind of gave me a little bit of a nudge, like,
yeah,
you're not supposed to be here.
So we should say thank you, Marty.
We should say thank you, Marty.
Thank
who
you,
had the same
Marty.
birthday I did.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the same birthday.
Oh, I love when that happens. So you must also feel at times like a grief counselor, which you have great advice on not going to get a reading while still in the grieving process.
Absolutely.
So what do there are some people who believe 100%, get the signs from the other side, talk to the other side, know they're going to see them at some point, but still just, and you might not have an answer for this, miss the person. When you're alive, when you're awake, you're going through your day, this is when it hurts. And what's...
Honor it.
Is there an answer?
Honor it. Mm-hmm. That's what I tell everybody. Honor what you feel, not what you fear, and make sure that if you're having a crappy day, own the fact that you're having a crappy day. In today's technology, don't post it, don't put out you're sad, don't ask for energetic interest on the negative kind. just honor what you're feeling, because grief is the other side of love. So when you're holding on to the grief, you're holding on to the experience of loss.
Right.
When you're holding on to the love, you're holding on to the connection. And a lot of people will come for a reading because they're looking for closure. It's not what they want. People don't want closure, because if you're looking for closure, you're putting a period to the end of that relationship.
Right.
You want connection. You want continuity. You want that connectivity. So for me, that's what I tell people. And if somebody's looking for a reading to fix them, don't go.
Right.
Don't go. It can only lead to disappointment. And if you have expectation of who's going to come through, don't go. You have to be open to the experience and the process. And this is what I say to everybody. And when I do events, there might be a couple hundred people in a room. I will say right up front, some of you will be read today. Most of you will not.
Right.
The event is not for the people who get the reading. The event is for the people who are not read.
Right.
Because as soon as you're read, you become subjective to what comes through, what doesn't come through.
Right. Well, my mom and I attended an event in 2007 in Secaucus, and we did not get read. But like you say, we felt great after. We felt like we learned so much, and we were thrilled for the people who got read. And it's like going to, like you say, it's like going to a birthday party. Yeah. Everyone gets a piece of the cake. Everyone enjoys themselves.
If they choose to.
Right. You have to go through, with the right frame of mind. And yeah, it's like going to a birthday party. It's great. So that's a good lesson. Everyone should go to his events, but we'll talk about that later. And then I just wanted to talk about, sometimes you're reading things, you're interpreting things, and you'll say something like, she had a baby. You might not know about it, but she had a baby. Yeah. So sometimes you're revealing family secrets, but you can't feel bad about it. I imagine you can't feel bad about it.
I do. I mean, sometimes I feel awkward about stuff. I was in Texas last year, 2 years ago, and I'm standing in front of like 500 people, and I'm getting this image in my head, and I'm like, I don't even know how to possibly say this, nor who the hell is going to say yes to this.
Right.
Can I say it?
Yeah, say it.
It was a gentleman who passed, who, when he was alive, had a mold of himself done in a certain state. So that when he traveled, he would still be able to be intimate with his partner, his wife. Okay. And that came through in the reading.
Did someone get up and?
Absolutely did. It was one of those moments.
She was like, "That's my guy."
She was like, "Yep." There's actually somebody. It was like somebody. I believe it was somebody in the room who knew them and knew the story. And but like, that was what he decided to come through with.
I love it.
Okay.
Right.
Awkward.
Mortifying, but you know what? This is validation, and that's the other thing. I always say they're here with me. They love me, and some people think like, isn't that weird? I'm like, they don't care about things like going to the bathroom or who you're hooking up with.
No, they don't. I call it bedroom and bathroom.
Human.
Yeah, they're
like base things that are human that they're not interested in anymore, right, at this point.
They're really, really not. Right. Unless you're connected to that person who's passed, and that's going to be a validation for you.
Right. Like,
hey, remember when? Right. That moment will come through, but they're not like peeping Toms on the other side. Right. Yeah, it's kind of creepy when you think about it that way.
One other interesting thing is, so your mom, you agreed. I did this with my grandmother. You agreed on 3 signs.
Yep.
And
with nobody else around.
Right. So only you two knew. And it took her
9.5
years. So was there a point, I mean, you of all people know you're going to get the sign. But at 9 years and 2.5 months.
Seriously, it was a long time. Once I wrote In One Last Time, which was my first book, I still haven't gotten the signs that I'm looking for.
I remember.
I got all 3.
Okay.
In a very short period of time.
Okay.
I was like, seriously?
So they came boom, boom, boom.
I think I needed to write that story publicly to say I do this professionally and I still haven't gotten what I discussed with her before she passed.
Right.
And it's not like I don't have connections. I knew people.
Right.
Shelley, amazing medium. But it was a pretty amazing moment when I got them. It was pretty powerful. And one was easy, one was hard, one was ridiculously hard.
And then, so when you got the last one, can you tell us where you were? Or did you burst into tears?
Every day at 3 o'clock, the hospice nurse would come, and I would say, "See you later. I'm going to Springfield," which meant that I was going to go watch Guiding Light, which took place in the fictional town Springfield. Right. So I watched the show since 1976.
Right, with your grandma, right?
Yep, because my grandmother wouldn't let anybody watch anything else. But so you had no choice. So I knew the families, the Bowers and the Reardons and the Spaldings and all that. So I said to my mom, "Take me to Springfield. Somehow, get me to Springfield." I said, "I don't care if you tell the medium that I'm going to Massachusetts or Illinois, just someplace where there's like a Springfield. Take me to Springfield." I said, "Because I know you're not going to be able to get Guiding Light through." In one reading with a British medium named Linda Williamson, she literally said to me, "Your mom is telling me that she's your guiding light," which was a pretty powerful moment.
Right.
And then years later, a celebrity friend of mine said, would you do me a favor? And I said, sure. She goes, I need you to do a reading for one of my friends in Manhattan next time you're there. Great, no problem. She gives me the address, set the appointment up. I go there, and I'm in an office building on, I don't know, 17th floor somewhere in Manhattan. And the gentleman says, right before the reading starts, and a work emergency comes up, and he goes, I need to take care of something. He goes, just take a walk with me. I was like, no, I'm good. He goes, no, take a walk with me. So I leave a office, and I walk through a hallway, which is kind of like almost a very wide, kind of felt like a factory hallway, with a big air door. And he steps through the air door, and I walk through the air door, and I'm on the set of the bar. It's called Company of Guiding Light. So I didn't get emotional. I became like a little like excited. I was like, holy.
Right.
Oh my, I'm like, and he turned around and looked at me and goes, you watch my show? And I go, what do you, and I knew his name.
Yeah.
And I knew the credits, and I didn't know his name from the credits. I go, what do you do? He goes, I'm the casting director. I'm like, no, you're not. And he goes, excuse me? I go, no, Betty, whatever his name is, the casting director. And he goes, until she retired and I took over.
So funny.
It's pretty wild. So she took me to Springfield.
She did. She sure
took
did.
me to Springfield.
Literally.
It's pretty cool.
So, are you afraid to die?
No.
You're not.
I'm not.
Because I am, and I am a believer.
Not at all.
But you're afraid to fly, right?
I don't like flying.
Okay. So how do you reconcile those two?
I kind of just have to own the fact that I don't like flying.
Yeah.
I just don't. It's a control thing.
Yeah.
I have the same feeling with trains that are going really. Sometimes I'm worse on trains than I am on a plane.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I don't like the lack of control.
Yeah.
That's just a me thing. But the process of how I might get there doesn't thrill me.
Yeah. Right. Right.
But the being there doesn't scare me.
Right. That's how I feel. I feel like
I kind of look at it as childbirth. Like, I'm never going to have childbirth clearly in this lifetime, but I understand the concept. Apparently it's painful.
Yeah.
But yet people keep doing it.
Right.
So it's how
They're
we're
not
born into
stopping.
this world. And I kind of think our death is our birth to the other side.
Yeah.
You know, there
Yeah.
might be a few moments of discomfort and pain, but I think for the most part, when people pass, they're not in that pain. You know, when you see
Right.
somebody, if you think of somebody who dies in an accident, and then you think about somebody who passes through cancer, I think the person who has the cancer has more of an option, more of an opportunity for pain
right.
than the person who passed in the accident, because the shock of what's happening, that release of the adrenaline and all that stuff that happens in your body, kind of puts us in a position
To not feel it.
it.
Right.
It's more like the Patrick Swayze moment in Ghost, where, you know, he turns around and there's his body. Like, I've had people come through, like, trying to get across to the family, like, I wasn't in pain.
Right. Right.
Whereas the person who's dying from cancer, who has morphine-resistant cancer, yeah, that person's going to feel a little bit more discomfort.
Right,
than,
right.
Because they're stuck in that vehicle.
Right. So the hard part is if someone dies suddenly, their family is
Right.
And then when they're going through the grief, you know, reliving, like you say, reliving the loss instead of focusing
Right.
on the connection.
And
the love.
that's a genuine message that they come through with.
Yeah.
Like, they don't want us to focus on how I got here.
Right.
They want to focus that I'm still here.
Right.
Which I think is hard. Like, it's a hard message for me to deliver to people when I say it's hard for them to hear that.
Yeah.
But it's true.
And they just want their loved ones to be. I mean, if I were on the other side, I would just want you to go on, just be happy.
Right. They don't want us to fixate on the how.
Right. Right.
That's a very big theme.
Is that, yeah. Yeah. Because that's also a very, you know, earthly based thing, how someone passes, and to focus on that just brings people not forward, not in their, you know, development.
Stuck in their grief.
Right. Exactly.
It makes you stuck.
Exactly. So do you have vivid dreams of?
I have. Not as often as I used to.
Okay. So you used to have.
Now when I have like dreams that stand out, there's always these moments or fragments in there that I feel like are precognitive that I have to pay attention to. Like,
Okay.
Like, oh crap, I need to like watch out for that. Or I need to look out for this.
Okay. Do you think that it's possible that, I think it's possible that our loved ones, our spirit guides, whoever's guiding us, visits us in our dreams at night, and we don't remember it most of the time. But there's a reason things are always better in the morning, and that you go through the day and you're hit with these, oh, maybe I'll do this, maybe I'll do that, but maybe it's because someone was guiding you. You know, they don't tell us what to do, right?
No.
We're all on our own spiritual
Correct.
path.
They can't interfere, but they can intervene. And it's mostly to give insights.
Right. Okay. Insights to help you, you know, each of us in our
Right.
own journey, which is
Like,
what
there
we're
are
here
people
for.
that are watching this that might say, well, you know what? I keep seeing the same numbers over and over again. I keep seeing 1111 or 1111. Or I look at the LED on my phone or my clock or in my car and it's the same number. there's patterns all around us. And if you pay attention to what's around us, you'll start seeing those patterns. And sometimes you recognize your own signs and symbols from your own team of energies, which would be your spirit guides, or from grandma, whoever it might be.
Right. So your spirit guides are different than your lost
I think so.
loved ones? Okay.
I think it doesn't. I think a lot of people want, like, their parents, their grandparents, or the people that they're so close to be the ones that are guiding them. I personally don't.
Okay.
You know, I like them to be separate.
Okay.
When my mom passed, people that I worked with at the psychic fair, they were like, "Oh, is your mom one of your guides now? Are you hoping that she's guiding you?" I was like, "No, I'm really not." And like, they would look at me like, "Why would you say that?" I was like, "Well, when I step on a plane and I look in the cockpit, I want to see somebody who's either older, wrinkled, gray hair,
That's
bald.
how I like my pilots.
I want Sully sitting in the cockpit.
Yes.
I don't want to see somebody who's brand new.
Right.
So for me, I wouldn't want to walk onto a plane and see my mom in a cockpit going like, "Hey, I'm flying your plane now." How about no?
Right.
I want somebody who's, specifically because I'm giving information to other people.
Right.
No.
Right. And when they get to the other side, they may be beginning their own journey at the next phase. Right.
Exactly.
So you're
still in evolution.
Yes. Right. So your kids, have they
had the freak gene? Yeah, they got the freak gene. They definitely got the freak gene.
Oh, good for them. Both of them?
Both of them.
Okay. So what have they done?
They're very, very in tune with energy. And my son, at the age of 2, made a connection with my mom, which was kind of cool because he was 2.
You told that story at the event I went to with my mom.
She was 15 years on the other side, and he got her nickname. I had turned 35. So it was like three things. It was kind of really cool because
he said something right when he was in his high chair.
Literally, he got her nickname. He couldn't say it. Her nickname was Princess.
Right.
But he said Quinn. I said Princess. But it was a powerful moment. And my daughter has come out with stuff like when I was a kid, she would talk about things that she should not have knowledge about.
Right.
So I'm familiar with. I was like, oh, so this is what I must have been like. Okay.
And what does your wife think?
Oh, dear God, not 3 of them? Seriously, it has to be like, you know.
Yes, right. Because when your son said Prince, she was like, oh, no.
Yeah, no, she wasn't. She definitely wasn't happy.
But when you first started dating, when did it come out that you had this?
Early on.
Yeah.
Early on.
And she was okay with it?
Yeah.
Yeah, then, yeah. And
I mean, she was, I was 21, she was 20, so 19. So it was more like okay.
Right.
Really? Like
He's
it
still
wasn't
in school for, doing something legit.
I'm going to be in healthcare. Like that's where I'm going.
What about your in-laws?
They were, I think, they didn't understand it.
Yeah.
I know that the word for witch in Spanish is like bruja. So they speak Portuguese. I'm pretty sure there was like a bruja mentioned early on somewhere in there. That's deniable. That's what they say, but they get it, you know. And once you start making connections with their dead relatives, and you know that there's no way that I could possibly know what happened in Portugal, and it's being translated back. It's like, whoa.
Right. They've seen the evidence.
Exactly.
One thing I just before we wrap up, I wanted to ask you about also. I'm not interested in tarot cards. That kind of stuff to me, or the Ouija board, is I stay away from it. But what are your feelings?
Well, I'm not a fan of like Ouija boards and witch boards because that's not something that teaches. That's something that invites. So I don't like the energy that can be invited in. I say you don't leave your doors open. You wouldn't want strangers living in your house. I don't think you want to invite lower level energies to come in because I think there are different levels. Right,
of course.
Astrology, numerology, psychometry, tarot, these are all tools, instruments that help to teach about the human personality, psyche, and archetypes of personalities to help understand where we're at and maybe some of the lessons that we're dealing with. So if you're utilizing them in that capacity, I'm totally fine with it. Okay. But if you see the person on the street with the neon sign in the hand with the psychic, and they're going to read your fortune or do your cards, or they're going to do astrology.
Or pay them $500 to get rid of a curse.
Yeah, exactly. Or give me $500 and I'm going to light a candle for you, that type of thing. Run.
Right.
So I think it's kind of like you got to be aware. That's why I said, the people with the negative attitudes who are the protesters, even though they might be more cynical than skeptical, I want people to be skeptical. Right. Because if you're really being skeptical, it means that you're thinking. That's really what it means. It's like you're thinking about your experiences. And there are people that do that, so you got to be careful. Right. But tarot cards are just that; they're cards. Right. Astrology is a science. Numerology is a science. These are actual, real things. And if you get somebody who's really, 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 really well versed in that language, it is awesome.
Yeah.
It is an amazing experience.
And you think it's okay to know the future? I think they probably can tell the future. I don't want to know, because then I might not do certain things that I'm supposed to do, even make mistakes I'm supposed to make for my soul to evolve. So
I understand that. And I'm
yeah.
like that with astrology.
Yeah.
It's funny, like I don't have a desire for the future stuff because I feel the same way. I would much rather somebody be empowered and in balance and make decisions from that place rather than go to see what's going to come up for them,
right.
unless they're so strong that they won't deviate from that. Like a lot of people will come to me for future stuff, which is fine.
Yeah.
But I let them know, like, I'm giving you insights. It's like I'm your weather. You dress accordingly. Some of these events may happen. Some of these events may not happen.
Right.
It's up to you.
Right.
Some of the events you don't want to happen, so you actually want to have that information to prevent something from taking place.
Right.
But a lot of times you can't, and that's where a lesson's gonna kind of help you. Like with astrology, I like to look backwards. So for me,
So you read yesterday's horoscope.
I like to look backwards. I like to see how my day
I'm
went.
going to start doing that.
I do the day before.
Okay.
Or at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I might read up on, there's a whole bunch of apps and stuff online.
Yeah.
I'll, YouTube stuff and just be like, okay, here's what's happening today, or here's what happened in the last week, and say, yeah, this is what I was feeling. You'll hear a lot, Mercury's in retrograde, the planet Mercury's in retrograde, and it governs contracts, communications, travel.
Yeah.
I will know when that's going to happen just by how I feel when I'm traveling and driving. I'll be like, oh, it's just a certain feeling that I get, and then I'll look it up and be like, oh, there you go. It's coming. Just because I know what it feels like.
Okay, yeah.
So inherently, tarot astrology, not bad.
Yeah, okay. Because people, they hear about my interests and then they think I'm into, gargoyles. And I'm like, no, I'm martinis and cupcakes and high heels. That's me. And I also believe in all of this, and I don't think it's weird. I think it's normal.
It's really just energy.
Yeah, yes.
It's just energy.
And energy doesn't die, and love doesn't die.
It's just energy. However, there's positive and there's negative. So
Yeah.
you got to choose your thoughts carefully.
Right.
Empowered thoughts.
I feel hope that there is such, since you've been on the scene, I feel like there's hope that there's this evolution, this revolution of making this more, this isn't weird, and this is just like
it's
energy.
Not,
like
but I have to say, where TV's at today and movies, it's always the quickest, lowest common denominator.
Yeah, you think.
And I kind of feel like with all the reality shows, it's not produced from a place of empowering people and enlightening them. It's produced solely for entertainment.
Right.
And even though the intentions of the people that are participating might not be that, the end result is.
Right.
So I kind of feel like I don't like where the subject matter is. It's like all these haunting shows and
I'm not into
ghost
that.
huntings.
Yeah, no.
It doesn't empower people.
No.
It's coming from a place of
It's
fear.
not about their journey and learning, which is
Right.
what we're here for. Yeah.
Right. So I think it's important for people to kind of know that you don't need the me. You don't need to go see a psychic, but learn about it. Learn about energy. Like learn how it impacts your life. Learn what it learn what it feels like to be a Pisces. Like know what stuff is, so that you go, oh, this is affecting this, or my numerology is this. Not to live your life by it, but to understand what it means to be a blonde, a redhead, a brunette. It's knowing. I call it knowing your breed.
Yes.
If if you have a Great Dane, you know what size poop you're getting.
Right.
As opposed to a Chihuahua. It's that simple. It's like if you know your energy, you know your energy.
Right, and that's a form of introspection, and that's always good. Yeah.
Right.
I love it. Well, tell
you.
us about Evolve.
Evolve is my passion project. Evolve is...
which used to be the 5, right?
It used to be the 5. So I was on TV. I did 2 shows. I did Crossing Over.
I never missed an episode.
Thank you. Most people are familiar with Crossing Over. And then I did another show called Cross Country. And I did that for 3 seasons, which I feel like I did under the cover of darkness because nobody seems to remember that I did that. But I really did. I really did.
We watched it.
And after 3 seasons, I kind of knew I was done with TV for then.
Yeah.
Like I knew I needed to, I pioneered the subject matter on TV, and I felt like I needed to pioneer it on the internet.
Okay.
So I did something called Infinite Quest.
Right.
And I did that for like 2.5 to 3 years. It was an absolute disaster and failure. So psychics absolutely can do really stupid things and not pay attention to their own signs and symbols. But I was passionate about the subject matter, and I knew I was supposed to do it. And I kind of dumbed it down, made it less comprehensive, made it just about me, and it became the 5. And then that evolved into Evolve.
Okay.
So it's an online community. Right now it's on johnedward.net, where for people who are interested in the kind of stuff that I'm talking about, the empowerment, the education, the enlightenment, tools for kind of like living your life looking through a metaphysical lens, that's what Evolve's all about. We have
Okay.
guests come on that talk about their journey. We had a phenomenal guest come on talking about healthy is the new skinny. She was a plus size model.
I love it.
And lost a lot of weight, but she wasn't able to be a regular size model, so she was the in between, and it became her passion and calling to educate young girls. And her segment, I turned into an entire show, and it literally brought 3 generations together: grandmothers, mothers, and daughters.
Yeah.
Were having a conversation based upon this girl's message.
Love it.
Conversation starter, helping people to evolve.
Right. Awesome.
While doing readings.
Awesome. So if people miss crossing over and
They could-
John Edward Cross
yeah.
Country, they can.
They can go to johnedward.net.
Okay, so it's johnedward.net, and we can find you on Twitter at
Psychic Medium JE.
JE, and on Facebook. Awesome Facebook updates.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
And thank you so much. This was
Seriously,
awesome.
I'm so impressed. Like,
Oh.
you really know your stuff. Like, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to get my questions wrong. She knows more about me than I do. This is not good.
No, you did good. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for tuning into AfterBuzz TV Spotlight On. I'm Fern Ronay, and this again is John Edward. Thank you.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
This is.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.